It was a cold, moonless night when Derek and his friends, Lily, Jake, and Emma, decided to venture into the forest near their hometown of Cedar Hollow. The woods were a familiar place, just a short walk from the small town, often frequented by hunters and hikers during the day. But at night, it was different. The air seemed thicker, and the trees creaked in eerie, unnatural ways. The locals spoke in hushed tones about the forest, whispers of ancient spirits, strange happenings, and the legends of skinwalkers. Derek had always been skeptical. Skinwalkers, the shape-shifting witches of Navajo lore, were just stories, creepy, unsettling tales meant to scare children. But something had changed in the town recently. There had been strange noises coming from the woods, screams that didn't sound quite human, howls that echoed through the night air. Derek wasn't one to be easily frightened, but tonight, as the group hiked deeper into the woods, an unsettling tension hung in the air. "We shouldn't be out here," Lily whispered, her voice trembling as she looked around nervously. "Stop being paranoid," Jake scoffed. "It's just the wind." But Emma, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stopped in her tracks. She pointed toward the distant tree line, where the shadows seemed unnaturally deep. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. They all paused, straining their ears. The forest had gone silent, not even a rustle of leaves in the breeze. "It's just a deer or something," Derek said, though even his voice lacked conviction. But Emma shook her head. "No, it wasn't." Then they heard it, a low, guttural growl, too deep to be any animal they knew. It came from somewhere ahead, hidden in the darkness. The sound was too human, too knowing. It was a sound that vibrated in their bones, a primal warning to turn back. The group exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke. They continued walking, the growl fading into the distance, but the dread in their hearts only deepened. As they pushed further into the forest, the atmosphere grew heavier, the trees closing in around them. The air became thick with an oppressive, unnatural heat, as if something was watching them from the shadows. Then, as if the forest itself was alive, they heard something rustling in the underbrush behind them. Whipping around, they saw nothing, just empty darkness. "Quit messing around, Jake," Derek snapped. But his voice trembled with uncertainty. Then, they heard it, a laugh. But it wasn't Jake's. It was an eerie, raspy cackle, dripping with malice. A laugh that sounded like it came from deep within the earth, and yet, right beside them. Derek's stomach turned as he felt an icy chill run down his spine. "Did you hear that?" Lily asked, her voice shaking. "It's probably just an echo," Derek said, though he wasn't sure anymore. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Something was wrong. The air around them felt thicker now, as if they were being smothered by it. The trees seemed to close in tighter, their gnarled branches reaching down like skeletal hands. Without warning, a figure darted through the trees. Fast, too fast for a human. The figure was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent at awkward angles, like they didn't belong. It was covered in tattered clothing, but its face, it had no face. Instead, it was a distorted mask of flesh, smooth and pale, with a gaping, blackened mouth. Derek froze. His heart pounded in his chest as the figure skittered through the trees, its limbs jerking unnaturally, like a marionette on broken strings. It was heading toward them. The group bolted, running through the forest, their hearts racing. But the sounds that followed them were not human. The creature's footfalls were heavier, as though its long legs were too long for its body. It was chasing them, effortlessly closing the distance. As they ran, the laughter returned, now joined by whispers, soft, slithering voices that seemed to come from all directions. The words were unintelligible, but they were unmistakably malicious. "Run! Run!" Derek shouted, his voice hoarse with fear. But the forest was closing in. No matter how fast they ran, the trees seemed to stretch out before them, twisting and blocking their path. The creature was getting closer, its breath like the wind, hot and fetid, brushing against their necks. Suddenly, Emma screamed, and they all turned to find her missing. She had vanished into the darkness without a trace. "Emma!" Lily cried out, her voice cracking with terror. But there was no answer, only the sound of leaves crunching underfoot, moving closer. Derek turned to see the creature standing in front of them now, its blank, featureless face tilted to one side, as if studying them. It stood impossibly tall, its limbs bending in grotesque angles. And then, slowly, it stepped forward. The group tried to back away, but they couldn't. The creature was too close now, and there was nowhere to run. Its mouth opened wide, unnaturally wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. It let out a low, guttural growl before speaking in a voice that made their blood run cold. "You should not have come here." And then, it lunged. The next morning, the forest was still. No one had heard from Derek, Lily, or Jake. The locals said the forest had claimed them. Their screams were swallowed by the trees, their fate sealed by the very legends they had dared to dismiss. In the years that followed, those who ventured too close to the whispering pines would sometimes hear a soft rustling in the trees. A faint, mocking laugh, followed by a low, distorted whisper that echoed in their ears. "You should not have come here." And the forest would consume them, too. The Skinwalkers were always waiting.